Hey, Tom, welcome to the Men Made for More podcast. I'm really excited to have you on here today. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to come on the show.
Thanks, Dave. I'm really excited to be on it. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm excited to learn from you today. But why don't you, for those listening, give a kind of brief overview of your story, personally, professionally, where you're at, and what you're up to right now.
Yeah, sure. I've basically started out on my kind of let's say martial arts slash fitness slash manhood journey really through starting Muay Thai in my very early 20s. I went to Thailand on a vacation with some buddies and discovered that Muay Thai was just this really cool thing, like Thai boxing. And so I got back to England and I started training again and just fell in love with the sport. Competed at a very amateur level because I was never actually a very good fighter, but realized very early on that I really enjoyed coaching it and teaching it, and ended up coaching several really good fighters back in England in the kind of early 2000s. And in the end, I ended up living in Asia for about 6 years. I actually met my wife out there. She's American, which is why I live in America now. But she was out there teaching English, and I was there training Muay Thai. And I decided to just bite the bullet and live in Thailand and live in Asia for a while. So lived out there, learned a lot of the culture, trained in various things like not just Muay Thai. I also did a bit of Lethwei, which is Burmese bare knuckle boxing. And kind of really got interested in not just Asian culture, but generally even deeper into kind of martial arts and the origins of that. And in the end, I ended up diving into like old British bare knuckle pugilism, which now bare knuckle boxing is a really kind of cool, hot topic. And because of the various promotions like this Bare Knuckle FC and BKB in England. But I was kind of very interested to explore the kind of the early stuff in the kind of 1700s, 1730s onwards. And so I dived into a load of manuals, and with my martial arts experience I had from boxing and Muay Thai and Lethwei and stuff, I was able to kind of look at those fairly arcane and complex boxing manuals written in really weird old English, where it's just so kind of like it's like a riddle to try and get to the grips with it. And ended up kind of figuring out, they must mean this because that body movement's got to be this. It's the only way that it actually makes any sense. And so I kind of reconstructed some of that, and I've been working on a lot of recently. I've been working particularly on trying to put out a lot of bare knuckle content, like bare knuckle pugilism. And I define the difference between modern bare knuckle and pugilism by just using that word pugilism, because modern bare knuckle sport is more like just modern boxing without gloves, whereas pugilism was this whole other thing with grappling and lots of things you're not allowed to do anymore. So that's that side of things with the boxing, but that also led me into more with to do with conditioning for combat sports. I'd always done kind of, well, not always done, but I'd done some lifting and things like that, and kind of old fashioned kind of not very functional strength training. And then I kind of discovered kettlebells and suddenly realized I loved those a lot more than I like lifting like barbells and dumbbells and stuff, and kind of playing with that for a while. And that brought me into contact with what a guy called Paul Wolkowinski was doing with gadders and traditional mace training. And so I kind of dove down that hole and like started, I made a couple of gadders and they were terrible, but they worked. And the first one I made was way too heavy and I couldn't shift it. And so I had to make a lighter one, and then I could swing it and I really enjoyed it. Ended up really getting into doing gadders, and then discovering that it was part of a whole system in India called Vyayam, which is the Indian. So in India you have Kushti wrestlers who are, do traditional Indian wrestling, and their strength and conditioning system includes gadders, but all sorts of other tools and bodyweight exercises. And so I really got fascinated by that, and that brought me into contact with a guy called William Calvani, who has since gone kind of offline completely. So you can't find any of the stuff he was putting out. But he and I went with Paul Wolkowinski, the guy who got me into the whole thing in the first place. We ended up, the three of us, going to India last summer, training in all the wrestling akaras there, which was really cool. So I was sort of developing this project with William, which he created, which was called War Yoga. And I'm working on that particularly next year, 2021, or, trying to kind of further that knowledge and that base of knowledge and put it out there. And then aside from that, I've also just written a book, which is called Undying Glory, The Solar Path of Greek Heroes. And that draws from various things from my experience. I'm half Greek. So growing up, I was really, really fascinated by Greek myths. And I've always had this kind of love of Greek mythology and Greek history. I was actually an archaeology major at university, but then never took it anywhere. Just did it because I liked it. And then this year, when lockdown happened, I ended up kind of, all my kind of paid work just evaporated for at least for a short while. It's ended up coming back again, but I was just at this point where I had nothing to do. And what I have done professionally for a long time is I'm a writer. I'm a writer and a copywriter. So I thought, well, why not write something I actually really want to write? And so I kind of reconnected with that Greek mythology, because I suddenly realized there was this kind of common thread running through it, this hero myth, and there's almost like a kind of a path that's been laid out, which is what I call the solar path, because it seems to it has these very kind of solar bright light elements, and it really is something that I realized applies just as much to men today as it did to men in the past. And while that's not the only interpretation of Greek myth, I just found this quite interesting common thread. And so the book effectively unpacks that and really advances this heroic ideal as an ideal for modern men too. So that's where I've been. That's where my journey has led me so far. So right now my book's come out. I'm going to be building on war yoga over the next year and kind of reintroducing those concepts to people. And I'm also doing a bare knuckle library on YouTube called Pugilisticus Britannicus, where I'm actually going to put out what I've learned from those boxing manuals. So it's pretty busy time.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that, Tom. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff, at least in my world, stuff that I'm not as familiar with. And I want to get into a little bit of that. I was taking some notes as you were writing too, some questions I had. And
sure.
First one that came up in relation to your book is just, was this something that you had been thinking about writing for a while? Was this kind of on the back burner, but just never had the time for it? Or talk me through kind of how the evolution of the book writing itself?
Yeah. So I'd always thought I had a book in me, and then I never had the time for it. And never really dedicated time to think too much about it. And then I'd been thinking over this idea of the 12 labors of Heracles, and I was thinking, or sometimes Hercules, people know, but in Greek he's called Heracles. And I realized that those 12 labors had kind of a hidden message in them almost. There was little nuggets of information that were, you could read it as just a kind of fancy story, or you could see it as steps towards, because Heracles is basically born as a demigod. He's the son of Zeus, but he would die a normal man's death and live a normal man's life. But through these 12 labors, he basically becomes a deity. He becomes like actually almost a state which I'm calling like solar man, which is like above the gods, because he gets to live this human life and then transcend into a kind of a godly state through his own actions, through his own deeds. And I had this kind of thing mulling over in my head and thinking, God, that's really interesting. I could probably write a pamphlet, a little leaflet or something about that, or a small magazine release kind of thing. And I started writing it when lockdown happened. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And suddenly I realized there's so much more to it than this. This is I finished the 12 labors of Heracles, and I thought there's more. There's something I'm missing here. Like, I'm going to look at the other myths again. And so I started looking at the other big hero myths, and I just found that they also had similar ideas, at least as I saw them, in these myths. So I found that the three earliest heroes in Greek mythology, who are Cadmus, Perseus, and Bellerophon, they all have things worthy of looking at in their myths. Theseus has things worthy in his myths, and then Jason from Jason of the Argonaut fame also has a story there, which is interesting. And I found this kind of common thread. And so I realized very quickly, oh, this is going to become a book. It's not just going to be a pamphlet. And so I started writing it. It kind of wrote itself, if I'm being honest with you. I almost felt like I wasn't writing it at one point. I felt like it was just kind of coming out as though it was like beamed out of the ether, you know. And then I finished it, and I talked to several people that I knew in my network, and one of whom is a publisher, and he just expressed interest straight away in it. So I was very fortunate, actually. And yeah, we've been working together on the last edits, and it's been a kind of really interesting process. It's just a rip roaring time, like less than a year, and suddenly I'm there with a finished book.
Yeah, because that's totally amazing to me. And regardless of the content of a book's not easy to write, and to do that during lockdown, I feel like when all this stuff initially hit earlier this year, there's people that kind of took advantage of it and said, hey, I have all this, I have this time now. Here's the stuff I've been putting off, and taking action on it. But then there's other people that, a few months went by, and maybe things dragged out longer than they want, and they had this time, but they didn't use it the best. People actually got out of shape, or didn't pursue those things because of, and I'm not fully sure on what reasons, but that's where I'm kind of curious of, have you always been the type to just like jump right into things? And was that, was it just like, here's lockdown, I'm going to start writing a book? Because that seems like something that a lot of people would procrastinate on, or would put off, or would think about how daunting of a task that really is. What is that in line with how you usually are, or was there something different with this process?
No, I guess I'm a fairly enthusiastic human being. So once something kind of grabs me, I just go all in. I guess with this, it's no different from other things, really. Like when I lived in Asia, I suddenly realized that there's always really cool temples everywhere. So when I was there, I was like, right, I'm going to take advantage of this completely. And so I just explored literally hundreds of temples. And at one point I had a website. It's still online, but it's very old, and it hasn't been touched for years, called the Temple Trail, where I used to just I used to write up all these temples and the stories of them. So it kind of is in line with the way that I've generally operated. And I guess, yeah, there's a part of me that was during lockdown was like, yeah, now I can just hang out and read some books and work out, which I did that too. But I just also thought, well, what an opportunity, what a golden opportunity to do something really productive with that time that would have been eaten up by, work instead.
Mm-hmm. Or Netflix for some people. So
right. Yeah. Right. And
No,
pints of ice cream.
Yeah. Right. No, that's totally awesome. Congrats on the book, by the way. That's we'll include that in the show notes for anyone that's interested in checking that out. But it's fascinating to me that you did that, because I know a lot of people that say like, someday I want to write a book. And, I've even found myself throwing around language like that of like, oh, sometime maybe in my 40s or maybe my 50s, I want to write a book. And I haven't had inspiration come to me to necessarily have something I want to write on. But I know a lot of people saying like, oh, maybe way down the road. And I think a lot of that's just because it is a daunting thing. So to be able to do that in that amount of time, but it sounds like that's, something you've always kind of had embedded in you.
I have, but I mean, it did. So I actually turned 40 this year. So I started the book at 39 and finished at 40. So, I mean, when I also had been saying in my, well, one day I'll write a book, but I guess it did just take until I was about 40 to actually just do it,
That's awesome. Yeah. Happy birthday, by the way. And it sounds like it was a very a fairly seamless process. You said it kind of wrote itself, but were there any kind of stumbling blocks in there? Any times where you thought about giving up, or any doubts you had about like, are people going to actually want to read this? Is this, any of those things creep in as you're writing it?
Yeah, they still do, I guess. So like, there weren't many stumbling blocks when I was writing it, because it really did just kind of, it just appeared as if by magic almost. So I was very lucky in that regard. But yeah, even when I was writing, there were moments where like, does anyone really care about this, or is it just me? And what I realized was, I guess, was that I was kind of writing it for me. So even if nobody really wanted to read it apart from me, at least I'd gone through that process, and I'd created something that I was really proud of and I really liked and I would have wanted to read. So I wrote it from the point of view of, well, it wrote it, like I said, it wrote itself, but like at the same time, I had in the back of my mind always, would I want to read this? And in the end, I kind of created something that I would have bought and read myself, basically.
That's cool. And to kind of reframe the reason you're writing it too, where some people, if they're relying too much on external validation and things, I'm sure those doubts can creep in more, versus something that you're truly passionate about, happy with, you're proud of the work you put in, is a nice different perspective to have on that.
Yeah. No, it's a very gratifying process, I think. I mean, I enjoyed it. And the hardest bit actually is the editing process. So you have to kind of hand your baby off to an editor, and I'm friends with my editor. He's, I've made friends with him basically over the course of this year, and he's very, very good. But every time it comes back to you, it's a little bit different, and you have to look through and say, no, I don't like that, or I like that. But ultimately, a good editor is always going to make you look better. They're going to clean up your kind of waffly kind of extra language and just cut it out completely. But the hardest part really is reading your book about 5 or 6 times at least in the editing process, and you kind of just like, okay, I've read this book so many times now, I just want it finished. So that's the hardest bit, I think.
Yeah,
the whole process.
You're like, I know how it's going to end, so I don't know why.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, exactly that.
I want to circle back on a lot of martial arts background, a lot of fighting background. What initially attracted you to that? Was it more the mental side of things, the physical side of things, combination, or how'd you find yourself so deep into some of those things?
Well, I guess my first contact with Muay Thai was when I was at university. There was another guy, and so England, we've got a bit of a reputation, or we used to. I'm not so sure now. I don't live there anymore, but we used to. When I was young, there was a reputation of people liking to kind of drink and fight and stuff like that, and be a little bit rowdy. And there was a guy who had this like amazing reputation for being really tough when I was at university, and he knew Muay Thai. So everyone's like, oh, he knows Muay Thai, so don't mess with him. So I thought, oh yeah, that sounds really cool. Like that's like, so I looked about Muay Thai. So, oh yeah, it's like boxing, except you can do like kicks and elbows and knees. And I was like, wow, yeah, I'm not going to mess with that guy. And so, yeah, that's my introduction to it, was that. And then I went to Thailand, and I was like, oh, they've got to see this Muay Thai stuff, and I saw it. I saw some fights in the stadium, and I ended up training in a gym there, just briefly. And just thought, this is great. I just felt really good, and I felt kind of a bit tough, which is kind of silly really, but I kind of felt a bit tough. And then I got back to England, and I was like, right, I'm going to train. I'm going to try this out, because I wasn't really an exercise person. I always found like exercise to be quite boring in a way. And then I ended up going to my first class of Muay Thai, and I was kind of terrified of walking into that gym, because you kind of think, oh, it's going to be full of big tough guys who are going to beat me up. And I went in, and everyone was really, really friendly and nice, and I ended up having this just amazing training session where I just like I really worked hard. I was exhausted, but just felt brilliant, felt alive and great, and really kind of excited. And it became an instant addiction almost. I was just like, right, I'm going to do more of this. And then I just dove straight in, and I started going to Thailand a couple of times a year to go and train out there to supplement what I was training in England. And I trained in Holland with a guy called Raymond Dekkers, who's a really famous kickboxer who's no longer with us, but he's a legend of the sport. So I was trying to seek out these people that were like really the top of this sport. And, you know, in Thailand, I was very lucky to train with a place called Jitty Gym, which was home to some really famous fighters who I've ended up becoming friends with. And so I trained with there's a guy called Liam Harrison, and I met him. He's like one of the top fighters in the world even today. And he's an Englishman too. So it's easy to connect with those guys. And it was just like, I had this amazing opportunity. It was this kind of whirlwind of like meeting kind of heroes, but at the same time, they were really down to earth, and we were all just doing the same work at the same time together. And that kind of, the whole culture behind it, as well as the physical aspect, it just grabbed me. And it was just it was an instant love affair, basically. And so that's how I kind of got into martial arts. It was just this kind of, it was a cultural and physical sensation actually of doing it. It just kind of grabbed me.
That's cool. And the guy at the bar that initially motivated you to be more tough, right? The guy's getting a fight. That's an awesome start to the story. But all the other stuff super cool, and it really cool how you really reached out to these people that you could learn from and grow from. And I think a lot of people are, you know, in martial arts aside, like people are intimidated to do that and to reach out to people that can help advance them and help, like you said, it might be because they're intimidated because you think they're these heroes or that they're not down to earth. Or what do you see as barriers that might stop people from reaching out and seeking out help, and what, how did you kind of go about that, of even like getting in contact with these people?
Well, so I've always been kind of pretty much, I mean, for such a hackneyed phrase, a people person. So I've always been very talkative and very personable, and like to talk. I love talking to people. It comes from my mother. And my father, actually. My mother, being a Greek, was extremely talkative and would sink hooks into somebody like within 5 minutes. She'd know their whole life story. And my father was a university lecturer, so he was also quite talkative. So I've developed that gene, I guess. So from that point of view, that gives me a bit of an advantage. But I guess something that would really put people off approaching their idols or people who they see as being, you know, very important in a sport or in something they're interested in, it's probably they worry that they're just going to be rejected outright, or like, oh, I can't talk to them, I'm not on their level. And ultimately, people are people. You know, I mean, you know, just because you're not as good at them as them at this sport doesn't make you any less of a person than they are. You know, they you know, eat and sleep and go to the toilet and do everything else that all of the rest of us do. So if you kind of just look at them like, you know, well, what's the worst they can do? Reject me, and then I kind of think they're kind of a bit of an asshole, basically. Then that's the worst thing. It's not too bad. So there's nothing to stop you at least reaching out. You know, I mean, if people reach out to me, then I do my absolute best to answer any questions they have about something I know about. And in my experience has been that these really sort of important people in their disciplines did that to me. So I don't see why they would be any different to anybody else.
Yeah,
basically.
Really, really great way to put it. And I think fear of rejection is huge. And I think, though, like you said, I found that as well. People are willing to help if you're, in as long as you're not leading with only trying to take from the relationship, or you got to be a little strategic about how you present things and approaching them in a way that you can maybe add some value to and share why it's so important that you're excited about these things. But most people, generally speaking, I found are very willing and eager to help if you're passionate, if you're going to follow through, if you're accountable to what you say you're going to do, and those types of things. If you're not flaky, then people are willing to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's been my experience. I mean, everybody that I've ever learned from has been someone that I've just said, hey, can you show me this? Or I really love that thing. It's just so cool. And like, could you just, if you don't mind, can you just tell me this thing? And people tend to just open up, because people like to share what they've got. Like in martial arts, in all sorts of physical disciplines, I guess people don't have secrets. And if they do, it's kind of weird, because like there's nothing new under the sun. So your secret isn't really your secret. It's something that somebody else has also done in the past, also knows about. And so, how can you keep that to yourself and not share that with other people? That's my feeling anyway.
Yeah, it's great. And the people focus on the fear of rejection, or they focus on the risk of what could go wrong if I do this, versus focusing on how much that can help them or accelerate their training or accelerate their career. Because you don't have to put an exact number on it, but would you say it significantly sped up the process if you were trying to do that all on your own?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, if I hadn't, every time I would work with somebody who was of just an elite level in something, and was a good teacher, because there's a difference there too, because some people are really good at something but are terrible at transmitting that information. But when you can work with someone who's just got those two elements, they are very good at what they do, and they are, if not very good, at least capable of passing that on to you, it's a huge acceleration. I mean, I like, for example, with working with like the mace, the gadda, I was pretty good at it, but I kind of figured it out by watching other people. And then I actually met with Paul Wolkowinsky, who was the guy who I started watching the videos, because he came to Connecticut, where I live. And just, there was two things that I'd really struggled on, and one of them at least was with Indian clubs, because I've tried the Indian clubs. And, they're to be very good at Indian clubs, you have to be pretty well mind-body connected in a way that I'm not quite there. But there was a move. I don't know how to transition. I tried and I tried and I tried. And I just asked Paul, because he was there. I said, Paul, how did you do this? And he just, 2 minutes, got me doing it, because he knew what to do. He knew exactly how to do it, and he knew exactly how to teach it. And so that just 2 minutes with that person who really knew what they're doing solved a problem which I hadn't been able to solve in probably about 2 years.
Amazing. And see that with a lot of people, and they put off seeking out help, and we can classify help as a like informal, reaching out for mentors, like seeking out people that you may already know, and then also like formal help of actually hiring a trainer or a coach or those things. But right, it speeds up. And I ran into this the first time I started getting coaching for our business, and now coaching other stuff personally, is it just accelerates things exponentially, like in Absolutely. Ways that I don't know. I wish I would have done it sooner, because you save years of frustration and time and trying things. And it's okay if you want to go down that route. I think there's value in learning on your own and not just jumping right into that. But it's something that can, if you feel like you're struggling with something, like you got to put yourself out there and seek help in those areas.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if you've been doing it for a little while, that you like it, and you've kind of found that you can do some things, and then that's a critical point, because there's that moment where that little bit of help there will just kind of launch the next step in your development in something,
Yeah. So true. And I want to circle back on something you mentioned a couple of times. I actually wrote one of the first notes I wrote down when you started talking, and then you mentioned it here again. So a good segue in, but you mentioned you were a good, or not a very good athlete, but you found out you were good at coaching. And I think we run into a lot of people that maybe they excel at something in sport or in, a physical feat, but they don't know how to coach it or communicate it. What do you think separates a good coach from someone who's just simply good at doing it? Where's that difference between, okay, I'm a good fighter, I'm a good athlete. Now what separates them from the good coaches that can actually communicate that and create other good athletes along with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's kind of interesting, because I've encountered some amazing fighters, But the problem is they, without thinking, know how to do it. And they've never really put the thought process in through all the details that lead up to that technique, let's say. So, for example, somebody who's a really good kicker in Muay Thai. I've had Thai coaches and English coaches who've just said, well, you just kick it, just kick, just do that, just turn your hip, and for them, they know what they're doing. They know exactly how to do it, but they can't empathize with the person who doesn't know how to do it, because they've always kind of known how to do it. And then at the same time, there's sometimes this kind of communication barrier where they're just like, they can't string together all the little details, but in a way that doesn't overwhelm someone. So you've got sort of this fine line to walk where you have to, first of all, put yourself in the shoes of the person who is struggling to do it, because I know I could do it, but I also know they can't do it, and I can see what they're doing wrong. But rather than forcing every single point so what I'll do, and I think myself as a good coach, maybe, I haven't had any problems so far. Maybe someone would disagree with you, I don't know, but I've got somebody and I'm trying to teach them a technique. I tend to run through the entire body mechanic first of all, I show it quite fast, and then I'll slowly run through and I'll pick up on every single detail running through. But once I get them doing the technique, I don't try and pick apart every single thing they're doing wrong. What I will do is I will focus on the biggest thing, which is stopping them. And then I'll just make sure that thing's fixed. And once that thing's fixed and they're doing it naturally and happily, then we can look at something else that they can do to improve. So instead of just saying, oh, you're doing it wrong, just do it right, like I've had some people do. And instead of sort of picking on every detail throughout every single time they perform a technique, I think focusing on something until it's kind of at least, not if not perfect, then at least up to a better level. And then you can start looking at other things that they're doing and then slowly building it. And eventually someone's just going to get all those parts and then they'll understand properly, I guess.
Yeah. I love that. And I see a lot of applications with that from, we look at, say, our physical therapy business, and someone comes in, you see them squat and you're like, whoa, okay, we got a lot of things to work on, but let's try one. You don't tell them that. You don't say like, well, this is a mess and this is a train wreck and this and that. You find one thing to focus on it. And same thing. And, with the clients I coach, some of our high performance coaching clients, it's like they come in and they're like, there's a lot of things wrong. Their schedule's a mess. Their priorities are a mess. They're doing these things, and you can't overwhelm them either. Though, with that, like whenever you're working with people, it's identifying that, okay, what are the one or two key things here that we need to change. And if we find the right keys in those things, then a lot of those other things tend to fall into place versus saying, here's a list of 30 things you need to improve. Like, come back when you have these figured out, and they'll be like, is this guy crazy?
No way. No way. Quick way to lose somebody.
But focusing on I think that, even ties into you writing a book and some of these things, like focusing on all the things that you need to do. If you really sat down and wrote a list of all the things you need to do to write a book, the list would probably be crazy. But what did you probably do? Start writing?
Yeah, I just started writing. Right. I started writing and then realized they need to grow. This bit needed to get bigger and this bit needed to get bigger. I found something here that I need to dig into and explore, so that's just, it's kind of a similar process, I guess. You can't just look completely at the big picture. It's good to see the big picture especially as a coach and seeing, okay, I can see everything's going on here, but you can't focus on just, okay, all of these things need to be done. You just have to be, okay, let's do what I can do right now in this time. And that's what I can do now. This is what we can improve right now. This is what we can work on right now,
Yeah, I love it. And that's whether good coaches, good leaders, good, when you're dealing with people in general, there's this kind of skill. It's almost like a dance between seeing the big picture and then being able to bring it into some minute, some fine details, but then also keeping the big picture in mind. If we get stuck on either one of those, the people that are always looking big picture and all these things to do and all these things they want to accomplish, but they don't know how to, day in, day out, accomplish those things and follow through on those things, then they're not going to get anywhere. But if someone's so like head down in the weeds and just working without stepping back and seeing where they're going, they might be making a lot of progress, but not in the areas that are needed the most.
Exactly right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and it's a fun thing. It's really cool to hear you say that, because I see that a lot, and I think that can apply to so many people listening. Whether that's whether it's a physical thing, whether it's writing a book, a job thing, trying to lead people. That's a good rule of thumb there. Anything else that stands out from a coaching standpoint that you tend to see the difference between simply good fighter, good athlete versus good coach?
I mean, really, it's a matter of communication. Some people are very good at teaching something. Some people are just able to make those minor adjustments and convey to somebody and communicate to somebody what they're doing, but also why. Because what I've found is if I just tell someone, oh, you should do this, they want to know why. Because if they don't know why, if there's no reason behind the adjustment or the work that you're doing, then people just say, well, that's just the way you do it. That doesn't mean it's the way it's done. And actually, if you explain something, well, you do this because of this, and because it'll help you with this, or because this is the end result of what we're trying to do here. People are going to say, oh, great, now I know. And they're going to actually put more energy into that, knowing why they should do it. That's another thing, I think.
Yeah, that's great. I love the what and the why with that too, where people need to know both. If you just tell them if you just tell people the why and don't tell them how to do it, they'll be like, okay, it's great. I know that's important, but give me some more with that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So there needs to be that. There needs to be the context of what you're doing. I mean, so for example, if I'm teaching some pad techniques for somebody, and a reason I'll string together a couple of techniques, people just say, oh, well, that just looks fancy or something. And I say, well, no, if you hit somebody here, then they're going to tend to react in a certain way, which is going to open up this other thing. So that's why we're going to follow up with this, or, and once you kind of start building that into people's mind and also kind of trying to kind of foster a certain mindset as well in who you're coaching, they're going to be much more receptive to what you're teaching them. If you're not only teaching them how to do this thing, but also kind of building them up psychologically to feel like much better about themselves and much better about what they're doing. Ultimately, that's got to be one of the main goals in coaching anyone, is not just improving that thing, but being able to make them feel good about themselves, which can translate into sort of all these other areas of life.
Yeah, that's great. I love that too. The mindset behind it. And another thing with mindset too, that something I wanted to ask you is, we talk with a lot of the clients I work with, a lot of the people trying to achieve health, and I think fighters seem to do a really good job with this. Is around habits, and whether you're a fighter, whether you're an athlete, whether you're just a business owner trying to take your business to the next level, the daily habits become so important for getting yourself to the next level. What are what are some of the key habits, having surrounded yourself around some of these really great coaches and fighters? What are some of the key habits or consistencies you can pick up on that separated maybe the average from the excellent?
Okay, that's kind of interesting, because what I've found is that things have changed a lot over the last few years. When I first started, there were lots of bad habits, like a lot of, especially in the English Muay Thai scene, which is a really great, very, very high level fighting scene for Muay Thai. but there's a lot of bad habits because people tended, with their natural English inclination towards drink and having a good time, would kind of train hard and, you know, get up to that fight. They'd fight and then they'd just kind of go off the rails for a couple of weeks, and then it would be that whole process of kind of rolling people back in. And what really happened there is that the fighters with a lot more longevity, and I think it's not just that, it's across all sports, even things like soccer and stuff. I think that used to happen too. Just people suddenly realize over time there's some guys that just stuck around longer. They just had these longer careers. They achieved a little bit more, and they weren't going out and cutting loose so much. You know, on the night of the fight after they'd finished, they might have a couple of drinks and, you know, relax, that thing, but then, you know, and take a couple of days off training just to recover, and then they'd be straight back in again. And that kind of consistency of always going in and training, you know, you don't feel like it, but you still go in, you know, you just sort of setting a routine for, and actually being really serious about what you're doing, instead of just, oh, well, I feel like training today, or I feel like doing that today, so I'll do it. So when you kind of cut out that emotional side entirely and just say, well, today is this, and this is what I do on this day, you know, it doesn't matter how I feel. Because, you know, all of us have that thing where it's the time to go to the gym and you just think, oh, I could really just stay at home and, you know, sit on the couch because that I'm just not feeling very good today, or something like that. But then you go in anyway, and you go in and you do it anyway, and within about 10 minutes you forget that you felt bad in the first place, and you're just doing what you're meant to do and enjoying it. So I've seen lots of this kind of, so I've seen a lot of the bad habits in the early days of the thing, and I've seen that change into people being much more routine and scheduled and serious and focused on what they're doing. And these days, of course, like when I first started, there was in Muay Thai, at least, there's nothing really about diet, you know, because so if you go to Thailand, you just, you know, there's a very sort of like set in stone routine at a gym. So you're in there at 7 a.m. You do about 2 hours of training. You might go for, you know, 10-mile run, and then train, and then eat breakfast, and then sleep, and then wake up again and train from 3 until 6. So it'd be like, you know, quite long, sort of 5-6 hour days. But the diet side of it was completely neglected, because it just Thais would just give you like a mountain of fried rice or stuff like that, because it always worked for them. So they were just like, yeah, have that. And so that even in England, the eating and diet habits never really changed. So people just ate what they wanted because you're training hard. And I guess no one ever thought about nutritional stuff, and that's definitely come in now. And the top guys now in the game are like, they take real ownership of what they're eating. They take real ownership of what they put into their bodies. And I think that's a really critical change in a good way, in good habits for these people. Because that's why you used to see guys who are great fighters, they retire and suddenly balloon into huge kind of human beings with drink problems and they smoke and all that kind of stuff, you know, and that's really changed, you know. I think that good habit of actually really taking ownership of what you eat and consume, and realizing that is almost as big a part of it as the actual training itself, you know.
Huge,
if not as big, you know.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. And the evolution of that's been cool to see in professional sports. And I think across the board, I think it's, you know, there's much more, you know, across all sports, that people are realizing the importance of a good strength conditioning program, a good nutrition regimen, taking care, like recovery, doing those things. And I'm sure many people, you know, even if we're not talking professional athletes, I'm sure some of us can personally relate to this. Others know people who, you know, were always fit when playing sports, maybe in college or something, and they were able to eat whatever, but that, you know, that can give the illusion of health when you're so active. If you're running 10 miles a day, like you're talking, and, you know, going through 2-a-day practices and stuff, then you can get away with having all that, but that doesn't mean internally you're healthy. And that doesn't mean it's going to last once you get done with keeping up that high level activity, which no one can sustain for a long time.
Exactly. And I mean, the strength and conditioning side of things is just exploded too. I mean, like again, there never used to really be much strength and conditioning, and now it's amazing. There's a guy in the UK who I know. He was a fighter, and he really realized he was very good at strength and conditioning. And a guy called Don Heatrick, and he has now just changed the game entirely by saying, "Look, Muay Thai, you have to think about, all of your strength and conditioning and the cycles you go through and the way that you approach that and it's different strength cycles, power cycles, endurance cycles, in that strength and conditioning training." And that's really suddenly become this amazing thing for all the young fighters now, because they have this access to being able to improve their strength and conditioning in a way that actually is important to the sport, not just, I'll go to the gym and, deadlift a couple of times and, maybe hit the treadmill, which is what it used to be,
Yeah, quite the change, and having that actually tie into what you're trying to accomplish too is a big component of that.
Right. The programming that didn't exist in the 20 years ago. There was nobody really programming at least in Muay Thai as I knew it, and now it's a huge game, and especially a lot of it also comes down to. One is just that people seeing it in other sports, but as soon as there's kind of money going into a sport in a way, people start taking it a lot more seriously. And Muay Thai has recently had a big increase initially when MMA really took off, but then with the One Championship which is big Asian MMA and kickboxing championship, they're actually really paying Muay Thai fighters now, which is something that didn't really happen before in the past. And so people are suddenly realizing, well, actually it doesn't have to be like I don't have to work in this job and then do Muay Thai because I love it and have to pay for my life with like being an electrician or something like that. They can actually just focus on it. And that's really been a game changer, because now they can really focus on their strength and conditioning, on their nutrition, and programming everything so that it all fits into them becoming like this really great fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it can become a full-time job, that's
right.
It allows you to take it a lot more seriously. And
well, that's the dream right there, right? Most people haven't got that luxury.
Most people don't have the luxury, but to get to that point, you still have to treat it with the same intensity and intentionality behind all those different areas that we're talking about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Tom, man, this has been great. I got a couple more questions for you as we wrap up here, but I appreciate your insight on all the martial arts side of things, with in writing a book too, and some of the life lessons you've learned have been really inspirational to learn from. And I think I need to go write a book now sometime soon when inspiration strikes. But I love how you talk about in the book too, and you mentioned how for men specifically of this journey of becoming a hero, and one thing that was important when I started this show is to help guys to become better versions of themselves, to learn how to take control of their lives and level up their lives in these different areas. But that doesn't come without struggles and challenges and hardships and those things. And that's
absolutely,
definitely want this to be a place where guys know that, like, yes, we can strive for that, and it's going to be worth it, but it's not going to be easy. You're going to mess up, you're going to fail. And you and I probably both know that our journeys have been nothing but easy. And the illusion of either a self-made man or a guy that's got it all together is just not real life. And I would love if you wouldn't mind being vulnerable with people listening. Do you have any challenges you're currently facing, or something you've gone through maybe in the last year or so that's ended up being a catalyst for your growth as a man?
It's kind of interesting. I mean, there's been some very interesting times in my life. So I think the biggest challenge I had, or the biggest single event in my life that really changed my entire outlook on life in many ways was when I first moved to Thailand. I was in my 20s. I was actually, when I moved there, I was 29. And at that time I was still quite a young man, and I liked to kind of drink and have a good time. And I guess there was a moment where it was taking over a bit. There was a danger there. And I used to go out every weekend. I'd go out and drink, and I'd get too drunk. And one weekend I went out, and it's in Thailand, and the Thais are very nice, but they, if they feel annoyed or upset with something you've said or done, they don't mess around. And I think I got extremely drunk and probably said something I shouldn't have said or something like that. And I got attacked. I got a sucker punch from behind, and then I got stomped. I mean, I was actually, a friend of mine apparently jumped on me and saved me, but they would have just kept stamping on my head. And I've actually got a metal plate in my face, just under my eye orbital, because I got 6 fractures around my eye. And as somebody who could fight, and as somebody who was not worried about, I was able to take care of myself and stuff, but actually losing myself entirely to a sort of abandon, of a complete chaotic, getting drunk to the point where I didn't have control. And that moment, having that happen at the time, was extremely traumatic. I was, had to have surgery in hospital in Thailand, and I was pretty fearful of going outside, actually. And I kind of went into myself, and I was lucky that I had my girlfriend, now wife, there kind of with me to help, sort of help look after me a bit, really. But I just realized then and there, it was just that revelatory moment, that this path it's going to lead nowhere. It's going to lead to somewhere really terrible. If you go out and lose control, one day it could be way worse. And I mean, that was a pretty bad time. But so it ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life, because even though I was almost killed and had this feeling of total helplessness afterwards, and total fear of going outside, it helped me rebuild a bit, because I realized, I need to have more control over myself, and I need to, I can't control those guys, but I can control me. I control how I react. I control my behavior. And so since that point, I basically completely stopped drinking. I'll have a drink once a year or twice a year, maybe. But I kind of was like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. And, I had a lot of, it was I'd had a few unhealthy habits too, but it really was just no, now I got to take control, and I can't live in, and in the book, in a way, I talk about these two concepts, which are, so there's two of the Greek gods, Apollo and Dionysus, and they kind of, while they're brothers and they have some connection, they represent two kind of opposite directions. Dionysus is this kind of god of revelry and drink and complete abandon and chaotic abandon, and Dionysus is this god of light and order. And it was that moment, I guess you could say, that I've been on this Dionysian path of I was kind of going a bit more chaotic, and this event just turned me around, and I just thought, no, I'm gonna completely change all these things and just take control of myself, my behaviors, and the way that I react to the world. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, I can't say I've got it all sorted out now, but what I realized is that, each step forward on that path is a positive step. You can't change all things, but that traumatic experience made me realize you can't just leave everything to fate and to other people to sort out. And you've just got to be I'm going to take control, and I'm going to make the forward positive progress that I need to make to basically realize who is Tom, and what's the ultimate version of me I can be,
Yeah, Tom, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. I applaud you for it seems like in line with your character, just going all in on it too, and not being oh, I'll just give it up on one night a week or this or that, but really committing to it. And those events, they suck at the time. We all have them. We encounter these things, but we can use those as opportunities to, feel sorry or feel with guilt or shame, or we can use those to really, make a change and use those as an opportunity to grow. So I appreciate you sharing that, and hopefully can encourage someone that is listening that maybe they find themselves on this path that they're not really happy about. Like, you also don't have to wait for that big event.
Oh,
You're on that
absolutely.
path.
I wish I didn't,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Because if you feel yourself drifting that way, then it's it's never too late to put your
No.
foot in the ground and change directions to start taking votes for who you want to be.
Right. And the thing is, that you're heading the wrong way. So, like, before that event happened, I knew I wasn't behaving well. I knew that I wasn't on the path I should be on. I knew I was heading in the wrong direction. But for some reason, you just feel, well, just another night out, or just one more of that thing. And actually, the moment you could just say, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that now. I know the way I should be going, and I'll start making moves in that direction. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to just pivot and do this thing now, but you can definitely, when you realize that you're headed the wrong way, you can change that.
Yeah. I love that, Tom. It's been so great. I was taking a lot of notes as we went, and we covered a lot of things, a lot of a lot of good life experiences and things. To highlight a few of the things I jotted down is the importance of seeking help from mentors, from other people in your life that can help accelerate progress. The ability to see both big picture and small picture at the same time. So this dance between seeing the big picture, but then, okay, what's the what do I actually need to be doing day to day, but also being able to step back and see the big picture again to know if you're heading in the right direction. And I also love what you said about communicating and being able to communicate the what and the why to people, of not just one or the other isn't gonna get them to follow in the way that you want to. So making sure you're communicating both those things. So those were just a few of the things I could add on. Take action immediately with you writing your book. I think that was an awesome thing as well. Is there anything standing out to you that you want to add to some of those things?
No, not really. I think that's a really nice summary. It makes me sound a lot better than I am, actually. I mean, that's right. You basically, everybody kind of knows what is right and wrong, but people tend to just be cruising in their lane and not thinking, I'll take an active change on something. Whereas what you really have to do is look at that big picture and say, okay, I maybe I like it, or maybe if you don't like it, you can say, okay, so that's my big picture. That's a picture of me. What don't I like? Well, I don't really like this, or I don't like that. So you could start taking steps and then focus in on those little things and say, okay, I'll change this about my lifestyle. I'll change this thing about my life. And then, when that becomes a habit that you're, doing without really thinking about it, you can then reassess again,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really well said. And last hypothetical scenario here, going to ask all the guests here as we wrap up. And I'm going to be excited to hear your answer, because just for context, you just turned 40. Yep. So you just wrote a book. You're in this stage of life now, and the question relates to 10 years back. So for perspective, that's 30. That sounds like a year after all this stuff happened with your big life change. But our hypothetical scenario is so you bump into your younger self 10 years back. You're leaving a coffee shop, leaving a restaurant in town. And you bump into younger Tom of 10 years back, so 30-year-old Tom, and he's asking you for some life advice, looking for some guidance, for some perspective, for some wisdom. And you only have 60 seconds to talk with them. You're on your way to an important date with your wife, and I know you're a talker, so you gotta narrow this one in. 60 seconds. What life advice you giving to him? What are you saying to him?
I guess I'd say to him, first of all, don't take everything too seriously, and kind of enjoy the ride of life. Because whatever you believe in terms of whether there's a life or an afterlife or not, that there's this. So this is what you've got. This is what you've got to work with right now. And so you've got to make the best of it. So at the end of the whole thing, first of all, you've got to enjoy it. But at the end of the whole thing, do you want to be remembered for what you're doing now, or do you want to be remembered for something else? And do you want your name to, if your name lived on beyond your physical life, what do you want to be remembered for? and put some energy into that and think about that and make an impact there. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of it really. It's like, what do you want to be remembered for? And try and make that happen, because this is it. This is your shot. Like, you're not guaranteed another one, even if you believe in that or not, that's up to you. But this is what you got to work with. Make sure you make it count, but also enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that. Well said, Tom. And that's, I really think a lot of guys can benefit from hearing that, because there really is a lack of urgency. There's this belief that we have so much time left ahead and that there's all this time to do stuff. And like, you jumped in and writing a book. I want to applaud you for that. And for just jumping in on some of these things, because there is a real lack of urgency when there should be. I think we need to live with more urgency, because we don't know, as you saw 10 years ago.
Yeah. Like, right.
Things
it just seems to get faster too. Like, I mean, like, I once read a book many years ago called Why Life Speeds Up as You Get Older. And it's a very interesting book, but why or why not, it doesn't matter. It really does seem to get like, I can't believe I'm now 40. I still feel in a way like I'm 16 years old in a lot of ways. It just seems like not very long ago. So yeah, you've got to make it count, and you've got to enjoy it, B, work on things that you want people to remember you for. If that's it, because being remembered is for something positive is good. Yeah, that's it really. That's my way of looking at it.
That's great, Tom. I've had a blast today. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your energy, your passion, you can tell you're excited about this and about life. And I appreciate that in you. For those looking to connect with you, where can they reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Okay. Yeah, cool. So the easiest way probably is Instagram, as terrible as that sounds, because it is just a very quick sort of weird little social media thing. But I'm on there. I am Tom Billinge, which is just my name with no spaces or anything, just TOMBILLINGE, Tom Billinge on Instagram. Or you can also connect to me through I've got a new YouTube channel about bare knuckle boxing. So if that interests you, you can check that out. And that's called Pugilisticus Britannicus, which is sort of a mouthful, but is about British old school bare knuckle pugilism. And yeah, otherwise, I'm pretty easy to find. I mean, just look me up, Tom Billinge, and you'll find a way. And I'll always answer people too. I'm kind of old fashioned. I feel like if someone messages me, then I'm gonna get back to you for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And where can they find your book? Because it comes out December 21st, which is in a few weeks of recording this episode, but this episode will launch after the fact. So your book will now be live. Where can they find it?
Right. So you can find it on Amazon, is the easiest place. So if you just go to amazon.com or .co, whichever Amazon in your country, it's going to be available. And also you can get it through my publisher, Sanctus Europa, and they have a website, sanctuseuropa.com, I guess. But Amazon's probably the most accessible and easy place for most people. So you just go onto Amazon and look for Undying Glory, or you look for Tom Billinge, and hopefully the book will come up.
Absolutely love that, Tom. Thanks again for taking the time. I had a blast. Thanks, and appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is really great fun.